أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على خير الخلق أجمعين أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأصحابه الغر الميامين. Respected Muslim brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The discussion that we will be having today is a very in-depth historical one. And I think it's one that a lot of people are interested in, actually, because there's some really juicy details regarding the topic that I think many of you have heard about, but not necessarily studied in depth. And so tonight, this morning, wherever you may be, I'm going to be covering the topic of just general Islamic history between the death of the second Khalifa, Umar ibn al-Khattab, all the way to the death of the third Khalifa, Uthman ibn Affan. So, and my intention in doing this is to highlight for you the differences between the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his style of ruling, and then the style of ruling of Uthman ibn Affan, who, lays out the blueprint for what future Umayyad rule is going to look like for the next about 100 years. And so what I'm hoping you're going to see is you're going to see how did Islam go from being a state, a state run by the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a state run by Waliullah, right, to a state run by a king. Because during Uthman's reign, it didn't immediately become kingship. That transformation was completed under Muawiyah. And so today what I'm going to be covering from the death of Umar, how Umar was assassinated, how the Shura, the Council of Six, elected Uthman ibn Affan to become the next caliph. And then we're also going to be taking a look at the death of Uthman, how exactly Uthman was killed. And hopefully, inshallah, the next lecture, with all that background knowledge out of the way, we will dive into the Battle of Jamal, the beginning of Imam Ali's reign and the Battle of Jamal, the battle against the Ahl Jamal. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the khutbah VC. I will be stopping at certain points to answer any questions. So I won't mention who asked the questions, but I will read out the question and then I will answer it. Sound good? Now, let us begin. Just a little note. I'm not covering the reign of Abu Bakr and Umar because the reign of Abu Bakr and Umar, like that in and of itself is a completely different topic. It would take me a very, very long time to cover those. And I mainly just want to give you guys the context of Imam Ali's Khilafah so that we can cover it next time. So I'm not going to be talking that much about, Hurub al-Ridda and the conquest movement and the Futuhat. I'm not going to really be talking about that. We will save that for another time, inshallah. So, that being said, we're going to dive in. So, Umar ibn al-Khattab has reigned as Khalifa for about 10 years by the time that he's assassinated. And during the course of these 10 years, the Islamic State that the Prophet ﷺ, the one that he established, had gone through many, many radical changes. So, for starters, the government, is still figuring out what it wants to be, because it's not quite hard kingship yet, as I mentioned before. That being said, it's also not inheritance-based. So Abu Bakr, when he gave made Umar the Khalifa after him, that was not considered inheritance. It did not cause a big scandal among people. The other difference is that while everyone was unanimous under the Prophet, under the first two caliphs, there was no, 100% backing. As in, you had Bani Hashim and you had certain other factions like the Ansar who did not approve of the caliphate of Abu Bakr and his vizier, his right-hand man, Umar ibn al-Khattab. And so Umar ibn al-Khattab, his caliphate was mainly, the big highlight of it is the conquest movements. And so Islam had gone from just dominating the Arabian Peninsula to now dominating most of the Middle East. They had conquered Egypt, they had conquered Bilad Sham, they had conquered Iraq, they had conquered Iran, and they were pushing into Khurasan and Sindh. And so the Islamic State has essentially exploded onto the scene, wiping out the Sasanian Persian Empire and greatly weakening the Byzantine Roman Empire. And so it has established itself as the most powerful state on the face of the planet. And these people had just gone from nothing, from being the barbarians living in the desert, to being the rulers, the kings of the most, wealthy region in the world, which was the Middle East. And so a lot of changes were made. So for example, Umar ibn al-Khattab, if you read about his biography, he was well known for his micromanaging. As in, Umar liked to be informed about everything. He liked to know exactly what was going on every battlefield in every region of the empire, everywhere. He loved to micromanage. And I'll give you a famous example. Amr ibn al-As was Umar's governor of Egypt. And there's this famous story where Umar heard that he was, getting too big for his britches. He's got a lot of money and treasure that he's hoarding up. And so Umar sent one of his agents. He said, go put Amr ibn al-As in his place. Go remind him who's the boss around here. And so Amr ibn al-As, when he sees Umar's guy approaching, he's like, oh crap, dude, this is bad. I know exactly what's going to happen now. So he tells the guys, like, hey, dude, welcome. Would you like to, come in and have some food? He said, nah, man, I'm not here to eat with you. I'm here to do my job. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Umar, told me to take half of everything that you own. And so he said, show me everything you have. He took half of his money, half of all the wealth he had accumulated. And then on top of that, what he did was he said to Amr ibn al-As, he said, I'm not done. So what do you mean? You took half of everything I own. He says, no. You're wearing 2 shoes, aren't you? Give me one of your shoes. So he gave, Amr ibn al-As gave him one of his shoes. And Amr ibn al-As was infuriated. He said, what a horrible world this is. Back in the day, my father, al-As, was he wore silk and dibaj. And Umar and his father used to be out in the mountains collecting firewood. Now he's the boss of me. Now he gets to treat me like this. And so Umar used to fire his governors for the most simple of reasons. If he received one bad memo about one of his governors, he used to fire him immediately, just replace him. On top of that, Umar controlled which of the Sahaba could leave Medina. Because Umar understood that these Sahaba, some of them, had some crazy ideas of who should have been the ruler. And so Umar was very careful about who he let leave Medina, because he knew that political opposition, he was barely keeping it down. And with all this money and all this land falling under the control of the Muslims, some people might start getting some bright ideas. And so by the time we reach the end of Umar's Khilafah, he has every single challenge that has met him. Right? As in, there was a major plague outbreak in Syria. There was a famine in Hijaz. The difficulties of leading these massive armies out in the field from Medina, because Umar never participated in a single battle in the conquest movement. He stayed in Medina and had his commanders doing all the work, right? So after years of conquest and meeting his challenges, Umar was still barely holding the caliphate together. His idea of what the Islamic state should look like, he says, this state belongs to us, the Arab Quraysh. The Khilafah belongs to Quraysh. This is our right. It does not belong to Bani Hashim. It does not belong to Muhammad's family. It doesn't belong to my family. It doesn't belong to that family. It doesn't belong to the non-Arabs, to the Ajamis. This state belongs to Quraysh. And so for the most part, the Quraysh who had hated Islam under the life of Rasulullah, because he kept them in their place, the Quraysh who fought against the early Muslims, the Prophet had basically kept them down. Because he knew that if they were given positions of power, they would hijack the religion of Islam and transform it into something it wasn't supposed to be. But Umar, he knew that by sidelining Bani Hashim and by sidelining, the non-Arabs, the people with no tribe, the people who come from a poor background, he knew that he needed to rely on someone to be the backbone of his power. And what would that be? That would have to be Quraysh, the old aristocracy, the old guard, right? And so what ends up happening is by the time you get to Umar, by the end of his reign, you start to see something very interesting. Umar ibn al-Khattab starts to increasingly rely on the advice of Bani Hashim, with 2 people in particular standing out. Number 1 is Ali, salamullah alayh. He would always ask him for advice regarding fiqh and regarding military matters. And Imam Ali was always happy to offer his advice. Why? Because Imam Ali, even though he had personal disagreements with this man, he understood that the destiny of Islam depended on him. And so if he failed, the whole ship would fail. If Umar made one wrong move, then what would end up happening? He would take Islam down with him. And so there's a famous set of khutbahs in Nahj al-Balagha that are recorded where Imam Ali tells Umar, he says, don't go out and fight in the conquest movement, because you're not a good military commander. You're going to get yourself killed. And then if you die, the enemy will take advantage of that weakness. And so you also start seeing some very interesting stories with Umar ibn al-Khattab and Ibn Abbas, Imam Ali's young cousin. Ibn Abbas was a young boy at the time. I'm going to give you two well-known short stories. There's one story that says that once Umar passed by the house of Imam Ali, and Imam Ali was sitting with his cousin, his young cousin, Ibn Abbas. And so Imam Ali asked someone, he said, where are you going? He says, I'm going to the mosque. And so Imam Ali says to Umar, he said, we'll catch up with you in a bit. And so he tells Ibn Abbas, he says, go with him. I'll catch up with you in a bit. Ibn Abbas, he's the one who narrates the story. It's recorded in Ibn Abi al-Hadid's book, Sharh Nahj al-Balagha. He says, Umar took my hand and he intertwined his fingers with mine and he walked me down the road. And he asked me, he said, Ibn Abbas, by God, Allah alayk, tell me, does your cousin, does he still want the caliphate? Does he still want it? Ibn Abbas said, yes, he does. And so Umar, he's like, yeah, dude, Ali, no one was worthier of it than him. But there were two things that made us do what we did. There were two things that made us oppose him on this matter. So what were they? He said, number one, his youth. He's young. If Ali ibn Abi Talib rules over us, he's going to rule for a very long time. The other issue is that he loves Bani Abd al-Muttalib. He wouldn't share it with the rest of us. And there's another story. It says once, Ibn Abbas, he says, once Umar invited me over for lunch. And so, I came in, I'm a young boy. Umar, they brought in a platter of dates. And I took one date. Umar, he just kept eating until the platter was done. And so he asked me, he said, Ibn Abbas, where did you come from? He said, I came from the mosque. He said, oh, how's your cousin? And so Ibn Abbas said, I thought he was talking about my cousin Abdullah ibn Ja'far, because me and him are at the same age. We're friends. We play together in the mosque. So I said to him, he's fine. I was just, talking to him. So he said, no. I mean the big one, the leader of the Ahlul Bayt. How is he? He says, yeah, he's fine. Last I saw him, he was reading the Quran. He said, does he still tell people that Rasulullah made him the successor? He said, yes. He said, and Umar, just so you know, I asked my dad, Al-Abbas, if it's true that Rasulullah said that Ali is his Khalifa, and he also said the same thing. And so Umar says, yeah, he did say it. But lucky for us, that wasn't enough to convince people. He wanted to write it down. But I stopped him from doing it because I knew that if he made Ali his Khalifa, all of Quraysh would have left Islam. And so by the time you get to the end of Umar's Khilafah, shortly before he's assassinated, he's barely holding it all together, this massive empire. He's holding it all together. And he's made a lot of changes to the way things are run. One of the most well-known changes is, for example, when it comes to the concept of conquered land. Rasulullah, what did he used to do? In the conquests of Rasulullah, whenever the wars would be over, he would give the land to the warriors who fought in the battles. And then the fay, the land that was given over peacefully, he would divide it among everyone else, and 1/5 of it would be reserved for him and the Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam. Fadak, that's the way Rasulullah got Fadak, is when the Jews gave it to him as fay. And so he said, this is for me and my daughter Fatima. Right? Allah told me to give this to my daughter Fatima as a reward for what her mother Khadija gave for Islam. Under Umar, this changed. Under Umar, what did Umar do? Umar made it so that all the conquered land, it's not given to the warriors who conquered it. What happens to that land? It becomes public holding. It becomes public property. And so the warriors who fought so hard in all those battles or whatever, they didn't get anything. Right? They only got the booty they could get on the battlefield. But the land, that was all, Umar said, no, this is for everyone. It's for everybody. Right, guys? I'm sharing the wealth with everyone. I'm sharing the love. And so by the time you get to the end of Umar ibn al-Khattab's caliphate, how did it come to an end? Umar was killed violently. He was assassinated. So how was he assassinated? There was a very famous battle that happened in Iraq. It was called the Battle of Qadisiyah. The Battle of Qadisiyah is like one of the most well-known battles in the conquest movement. In it, the Muslims, though vastly outnumbered, managed to deal a crushing blow to the Sasanian Persian Empire. It's just a knockout punch. And so the Muslims, when they won this battle, one of the commanders in the army that fought at the Battle of Qadisiyah was a man named Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah. Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah, he took a slave as his captive. This slave, what was his name? His name was Abu Lu'lu'ah. So Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah, he came back to Medina. Now Umar had a very, very well-known rule. It's recorded, I believe, in Musannaf Abdul Razzaq San'ani. He mentions Umar had a rule that he would not allow non-Arabs into Medina. Non-Arabs were not allowed. And so Mughira, he had to get special permission from Umar. Like, Umar, this Persian slave, he's really, really smart, and he knows how to build stuff, and he knows how to make mills and work with steel. And so Umar was like, okay, I'll let him in. I'll make an exception. And so Al-Mughira used to abuse Abu Lu'lu'a, and he used to make him work very hard and used to take most of his money. And so one day, Abu Lu'lu'a came to Umar ibn al-Khattab. He said to him, my master is abusing me and he's doing this to me, and I demand that you, do something about it. And Umar just ignored him. He said, nah, you're fine. That's your problem. That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. And so Abu Lu'lu'a decided then and there, he's like, you know what, I'm going to kill Umar ibn al-Khattab. And so the story goes that he went and he got his hands on a certain knife, a double-headed knife, and then he took it to another figure, and his name was Al-Hurmuzan. Al-Hurmuzan was a Persian commander who fought the Muslims, but he was taken captive and brought to Medina. And so he became a Muslim, and he basically switched sides. He started giving the Muslims information on how to defeat the Persians. And so Abu Lu'lu'a, his fellow Persian, asked him, he was like, what do you think of this knife, this double-headed knife? And so he said to him, like, dude, I don't know why you made that, but I mean, I don't think anyone could survive a stab from that thing. So Abu Lu'lu'a decided, he's like, all right, I'm ready. It's time to go, go for broke, go big or go home. And so Abu Lu'lu'a, one day he comes into the mosque of Medina. He stands in the front row. And so Umar turns around, as he does. Today, if you go pray at a mosque, what the imam will usually do, he'll say, straighten your rows and fill in your gaps. And he'll turn around and he'll look behind him. He'll make sure the rows and the gaps are filled, and then he'll begin the salat. And so what ends up happening is he turns around, he sees everyone in the front row, Abu Lu'lu'a is among them, and then he faces forward and he begins the salat. When Umar is praying, Abu Lu'lu'a reaches for the dagger, then he goes up to him and he swings as hard as he can, and he buries the dagger in his stomach, in Umar's stomach. And he stabs him quite a few times. I don't remember the exact number. And so Umar was just completely taken by surprise. He had no opportunity to defend himself. And so Abu Lu'lu'a stabbed him a few times, and then he made a run for it. And so the sources differ as to whether or not Abu Lu'lu'a managed to escape, right? Or he killed himself, or he was killed in the Mosque of Medina. Now, before we move on, I do not accept this narrative because I find it very, very strange. I don't understand why on earth Abu Lu'lu'a would try to kill Umar because of Mughira abusing him. Wouldn't he kill Al-Mughira instead? It makes very, very little sense that this random Persian slave, for such a trivial reason, would go try to kill the caliph, the head of the state. And so there's a few scholars who have offered interesting perspectives as to the motivations behind the assassination of Umar ibn al-Khattab. The one that I think makes the most sense is that Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan had gotten news that Umar was going to remove him from power in Syria. And so panicking, he decided to cooperate with Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah, and through this they managed to get a slave willing to carry out the deed. And so Umar was assassinated. So there's no real proof to back this up. It's basically a theory. There's no explicit source that says this. But that being said, I think it makes much more sense than to say that one day this slave just randomly got angry at Umar. He's like, you know what, I'm going to kill him because he refuses to punish my master, right? And so what ends up happening when Abu Lu'lu'a is killed, right? He kills himself or he's killed. Now Umar is, he suffered a critical injury. He's been wounded critically. And so the story goes that Umar, when this happened to him, after he was stabbed, he lived for a few days, right? He didn't die immediately. And so he didn't immediately succumb to his wound. They took him to a bed and they brought in a doctor. And they said to the doctor, what's going to happen to Amir al-Mu'mineen? And he said, okay, well, there's only one way to find out. We got to know, if this knife penetrated his stomach lining. So what he did, he said, okay, bring me, he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, what's your preferred drink? What would you like to drink? He said, bring me some nabidh. So, okay, you heard the man, bring some nabidh. They brought the nabidh, and so Umar gulped down some nabidh, And so they looked at his stomach, and so, the liquid is coming out. But they're like, okay, we can't tell if that's just blood or nabith because they're about the same color. Said, okay, let's try milk. So they gave Umar some milk, and now they can see the white stuff spewing out. It's like, oh, dude, you're not walking away from this one, man. I'm sorry to tell you, but you're going to die soon. So you need to get your affairs in order. And so Umar said, okay, if I'm going to die, I need to choose a successor. So someone said to him, he's like, why don't you choose your son, Abdullah ibn Umar? And so Umar laughed out loud. He said, why would I make him my successor? He doesn't even know how to divorce his wife. He says, no, man, I'm not making this an inheritance thing. So he said, assemble the following people. And then he names the 6 people on the council, right? Uthman, Ali, Talha, Zubair, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, and Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf. These 6 major Sahaba. He says, assemble these 6 people. And the following rules. These are the 6 candidates. He says, these are the rules. If these people come together, they have 3 days to pick a caliph, right? If by the end of 3 days, 4 of them have agreed on someone and 2 of them have disagreed, then kill those 2. Death is an excellent motive. Threat of death is an excellent motivator. He says, okay, and if it's 5 of them, if 5 of them agree and 1 of them disagrees, then kill that 1. And so then they said to Umar, okay, what if it's 3 on 3? Because that's an even number. It's 6 people on the council. What if 3 people want one person, 3 people want another person? So Umar said, if it comes down to 3 on 3, then the side with Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf supporting it wins. And so for 3 days, the Muslims were without a caliph, essentially. And I believe it was Suhaib al-Rumi was essentially like the de facto head of state for 3 days until the caliph was chosen. And so what ended up happening is these 6 people, they assembled and they debated amongst themselves who should be the Khalifa. Now, there were 2 main candidates, Ali and Uthman. Because everybody else, they're major companions, but they don't have anywhere near the clout that Ali and Uthman ibn Affan do. And so I remember Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, he asked Imam Ali, he said, why are you going to this meeting of 6? You know that you're not going to win. You know that Quraysh hate you. He says, yeah, uncle, but I have to go, because if I don't go, you know what they're going to say? They were like, Ali, we would have made you caliph if you had just come to the meeting. It's like, I don't want to give them any excuse. And so Imam Ali, he came to the meeting. In this meeting, Imam Ali highlighted all of his merits. I was the first Muslim. I was the first one to pray. I am the brother of Rasulullah. He compared me to Harun. Right? I'm the greatest warrior among you. I'm the one who conquered Khaybar when the rest of you couldn't. I was the husband of Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha, the father of Hassan and Hussein. None of you have merits that can match me. And so Imam Ali, salamullahi alayhi, his one supporter on the council was who? Was Az-Zubair, his cousin. Zubair supported Imam Ali. Here's the issue. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas and Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf are the in-laws of Uthman. I believe Uthman, that both of them were his in-laws. Like they were married to like women of his family. And so Imam Ali knew right away that this deck was stacked against him. He knew that he couldn't win. The odds were against him. Umar, with his sagacious mind, even while in the grave, had just managed yet again to oppress the Ahlul Bayt and to deny them their rightful place by organizing this council in such a way where it was basically impossible for Ali to win. Ali having a chance of winning was only an illusion. It was designed to make people think like, oh, dude, look, Umar gave Ali a fair shot at it as well. And so what ended up happening is that Talha sided with Uthman. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas sided with Uthman. And so Zubair is with Imam Ali. That leaves only one person, Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf. If Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf sides with Ali, Ali wins. If he sides with Uthman, Uthman wins. So this election was that close. And so Abd al-Rahman ibn Auf, what did he do? He said to Imam Ali, he said to him, Ali, if I make you Khalifa, do you promise to abide by the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah and the Sunnah of the Shaykhain? Imam Ali, you know what he said? He said, as for the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah, of course, but as for the Sunnah of the Shaykhain, no, I will make no such promise. They had their way of doing things, and I have my way of doing things. It's ironic because people, what do they say? They say, Ali loved the Shaykhain, and he loved Abu Bakr and Umar, and they were all friends. So wait a minute, Imam Ali gave up the election. He gave up the election on that one. I will not compromise my deen for the dunya. I will not compromise my religion for my ambitions for political power. Uthman, Abdurrahman bin Auf went over to him. He said, Uthman, if I make you the Khalifa, do you promise to abide by the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah and the Sunnah of the... And Uthman's like, yes, of course. He didn't even let him finish. He took his hand and he shook it and he's like, yes, of course. Abdurrahman bin Auf, of course, you got it, man. Whatever you say. I'll do everything. I'll do whatever you ask. Just make me Khalifa. And so Imam Ali, what did he say? I remember this is recorded in Tariq al-Tabari. He said, this is not the first time you have denied us, the Ahlul Bayt, our rightful place. And so Abdurrahman ibn Auf said to him, he said, Ali, don't be a sore loser. Everyone knows you're so greedy for the caliphate. So Imam Ali, you know what he said to him? He said, you made him caliph in the hope that one day he'll do to you what Abu Bakr did to Umar. You one day. May Allah cause division between you two. And ironically enough, what ends up happening, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, later, he comes to Imam Ali, salamullah, like he's like, Ali, I was wrong. I shouldn't have made Uthman the Khalifa. I should have made you the Khalifa. Let's rise up against him together. You know what Imam Ali said to him? In Arabic, we say, akilha. This is your doing. This is your fault. And so Abdurrahman ibn Auf, him and Uthman were best friends and everything. How did Abdurrahman ibn Auf die? Abdurrahman ibn Auf, when he died, he made it clear in his will. He said, don't let Uthman pray over me. I don't want him to pray over me. Let someone else do it. I think it was Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas in the end. But now Uthman ibn Affan is the Khalifa. He's Caliph number 3. Yeah, Caliph number 3. Anyway. Uthman ibn Affan is now Khalifa number 3. How long does Uthman ibn Affan reign? Uthman reigns for 12 years. What does that mean? Umar only reigned for 10, and Abu Bakr reigned for 2 and some odd months. That means Uthman ruled for as long as the first 2 caliphs combined. Imam Ali, how long did he rule? He ruled for only 4 years. 4 years and some odd months, I think. Or maybe 3 and some odd months. I don't remember exactly. Uthman comes to power, and he's going to rule for 12 years. Now, there is a claim that some scholars make. They say, Uthman, the first 6 years were good, but then the last 6 years is when everything started to go bad. Right? Let's see if that's true. Uthman, what are the main issues with him? What were the biggest weaknesses that he had? Number 1, Uthman was not as strict as Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar ibn al-Khattab was a politically sagacious man. He micromanaged everything. No one dared step out of line with him. He had eyes everywhere. You step out of line with him even a little bit, you get the hammer, right? Uthman, he has a reputation. He's more of a, he's a kind old man. He's a really soft guy, right? Umar is the guy who's like yelling at everybody and no one likes him and no one, he's a very disagreeable person. But at the end of the day, everyone follows him because he has the power. It's like, dude, what are we going to do? We can't argue with this guy. With Umar, it's like, it's my way or the highway. With Uthman, it's like, I'm going to be lenient on you. Like that ban on Sahaba moving out to the other regions without permission, he lifted it. That's something very famous. Uthman, what was his other big personality trait that impacted his reign? He was a nepotist. Nepotism, what does that mean? Nepotism, today, I'll use my country of origin as an example. If you go to Iraq, you will find that the minister of such and such and the minister of such and such, what does he do? When he gets the ministry, he starts promoting his cousin, his son-in-law, his brother, his uncle, his relatives. They all get a position within his ministry, correct or no? That's nepotism. And nepotism is not just a problem in Iraq. Nepotism, unfortunately, is an issue all over the Islamic world, is that someone will come to power and he'll put his relatives in positions of power that they do not deserve, that they are not qualified for, right? So Uthman ibn Affan was a major nepotist. Major nepotist. I'll give you some examples. So, when Uthman first came to power, he gave 100,000 dirhams to his nephew Sa'id ibn al-As. 100,000 dirhams to his nephew Sa'id ibn al-As. For what? No one knows. So the members of the Shura, the members of the council, Ali, Talha, Zubair, they all criticized. They're like, Uthman, what are you doing? It's like, I'm helping my family. Like, Abu Bakr and Umar had families too, but they never did this with their families. It's like, yeah, Abu Bakr and Umar had their way of doing things, and I have my way of doing things. So that promise he made of following the sunnah of the Shaykhain, what happened to it? As soon as he became Khalifa, zip, right out the window. Right? Another thing that Uthman did, he had two relatives. He had a relative, a very infamous relative, his cousin Marwan ibn al-Hakam. Marwan ibn al-Hakam, during the life of Rasulullah, had been exiled from Medina. Abu Bakr and Umar both upheld the exile. They did not let him back into Medina. Uthman ibn Affan, you know what he did? He let Marwan back into Medina, and he made him his vizier, his advisor, his right-hand man. And at one point, he gave him all of the kharaj, all the tax money of Ifriqiya, of the province of Africa. He gave it all to Marwan ibn al-Hakam, all of it. I'll give you another example. You remember how I told you Umar ibn al-Khattab said that all the land taken in the conquest movement is now public property? Uthman, you know what he did? He said, no. You see, the Imam, the ruler of the state, Rasulullah, when he was the ruler, he decided what happens to the money. Right, to all the land. The land that's conquered, it was all up to him, and then he divided it the way he saw fit. So what did Uthman do? He said, all of this land, it's not public property, it's crown property. It belongs to me. And I do with it whatever I want. And so Umar, what did he do? Is public property. Rasulullah, so notice the difference. Rasulullah, under Rasulullah, it's given to the warriors who fought for it. If you fought for it, you get a piece of it. Under Umar, no, it's public property. Right? We're sharing it with everybody. Under Uthman, it's like, no, it's mine. I'm the Imam. I do with it whatever I want. And that khums, that Rasulullah, a fifth of it goes to Rasulullah personally. He says, no, a fifth of it, that's mine. That's my property. The rest of it, I dish it out to whoever I want. But a fifth of it is mine. Fadak, what happened to Fadak under Uthman ibn Affan? He said, here, Marwan ibn al-Hakam, this is yours. He gave Fadak to Marwan ibn al-Hakam. So Abu Bakr and Umar, what did they do? Abu Bakr and Umar, they took this, it belongs to everybody. We robbed Bani Hashim, we robbed the Ahl al-Bayt, but it belongs to everyone, to make everyone happy. Uthman is like, no, this is mine. It's mine. I'm the Imam. I can do with it whatever I want. Right? And so there's examples of what Uthman used to do with this. Uthman, some of this land, what he used to do is he used to take this land, because it's his now. What he used to do is he used to sell it, trade it with Sahaba who had land in Hijaz, land in Arabia. So it's like Uthman would take your land in Arabia and then he'd give you some land in Iraq. He would take your land in Arabia and he would give you some land in Syria or Egypt. Uthman became unimaginably wealthy using this method. And many of the Sahaba, especially Talha and Zubair, they made so much money. So much money and land and property. Like I remember Zubair, if you go to Ibn Khaldun's book, when he talks about how much wealth the Muslims gained during the conquest movement, he said, dude, Zubair had a palace in Kufa, he had a palace in Medina, he had one in Egypt, and he had land in each one, and he had like something like 100,000 slaves or something like that. And horses, thousands of horses, stables filled with horses. And so Uthman ibn Affan, immediately, this issue of the first 6 years were good and then the last 6 years are bad, that's not true at all. Uthman continued many of the practices of the second Khalifa, right? But because the second Khalifa was so strict and he punished anyone who stepped out of line, no one dared to complain. With Uthman, slowly the tension was building against him. Slowly, people were starting to get upset, fed up with him, right? And the other thing on top of that, what did he do? When he became the ruler, he basically replaced every single one of the governors in the Islamic State with Umayyad clansmen. So I'll give you an example. One of them was the governor of, there was a region in Syria. It's called, I think it's pronounced Qanisran or Qanisrain, right? And Hems. All of these regions, the governor, he became old and he decided, you know what, I'm going to step down. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. He said, Muawiyah, you know how you're the governor of just Damascus? How would you like to become the ruler? You go from the governor of Damascus to the ruler of Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and what was the other one? Palestine, astaghfirullah. All of that was combined into one super region under Muawiyah. Umar would never let one of his governors become that powerful. But under Uthman, like, Muawiyah is from Bani Umayyah. He's one of my boys. I can trust Muawiyah. Muawiyah, I can trust you, right? Muawiyah, meanwhile, is counting his money. He's like, yeah, whatever you say, cousin. And so another example, he removed the governor of Kufa and he made Al-Walid ibn Uqba the governor of Kufa. He also made another one. Let's see here. His own foster brother, Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Sarh, the ruler of Egypt. Ibn Abi Sarh, we talked about him a few days ago. You guys know the story of the man who used to be a scribe of Rasulullah, then he became a murtad, and then he went to Mecca. And then when Rasulullah conquered Mecca, he wanted the Sahaba to kill him, but none of them could figure it out. So he got away. That's Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh. The murtad, he later becomes the governor of what? The governor of Egypt. Uthman, the governor of Mecca, he replaced them, and replaced them with who? An Umayyad. Uthman checked them all off the list. He made a list of all the governors. One by one, they were replaced by who? By Umayyin. Muawiyah, I don't need to tell you what kind of a person Muawiyah is. Ibn Abi Sarh was a murtad. Think of his morals, there you go. What more do you want? Walid ibn Uqba, you know what he did? There's a very infamous incident with Al-Walid ibn Uqba. Al-Walid ibn Uqba, he's the governor. And so the governor, what did he used to do? The governor would have to come out and he would lead salat. Right? And so the governor would come out and he would lead salat. And so he would lead salat al-jama'ah. Al-Walid ibn Uqba, one morning he came out to salat and something very interesting happened. Salat al-Fajr is how many rak'ahs? 2 rak'ahs. Walid ibn Uqba, how many rak'ahs did he pray that morning? He prayed 4. 4 rak'ahs. He prayed. So the Muslims are all praying behind him. And they're like, wait a minute. Why are we praying 2 extra rak'ahs? Is this some sort of new salat? Did Salat al-Fajr change? And so the people, when salat was over, they went up to Al-Walid. They're like, Walid, you know, you prayed 4 rak'ahs instead of 2, right? Walid, drunk, he turned around and said to them, and he said, well, do you want me to pray more? Azidukum? Do you want me to pray? Is 4 not good enough for you? I can pray more if you want. And so the Muslims were outraged because why? They realized that their governor had just led Salatul Fajr, Salatul Jama'ah while drunk. And so immediately, what did they do? They wrote a letter to Uthman. Said, Uthman, your cousin, your relative, it's his half brother, I believe. They come from the same mom, but not the same dad. He said to, this brother of yours, he led salat while he was drunk. Is this the person you made our governor? Uthman ibn Affan, you know what he did? He called Walid back. He said, Walid, what did you do, dude? Like, come on, man. He's like, Walid, come on, man. You can't do this in public. Walid ibn Uqba, he said, all right, Uthman, I messed up. Like, what are you going to do to me now? He said to him, well, dude, I got to punish you. Like, because this is a scandal. This is major. I got to do something. And so the ruling for getting drunk is what? Is lashing. So Uthman ibn Affan said, who is willing to carry out the punishment? No one wanted to carry out the punishment. You know why? Because Uthman, that's his brother. And all the governors are from Banu Umayyah. If you carry out that punishment, what's going to happen? Everyone in a position of political power is going to have a target on you. You're going to have a target on you. No one wanted to punish Al-Walid ibn Uqba. Who finally punished him? Who raised his hand? He said, I'll be the one to do it. I will take great pleasure in being the one to do it. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayh. No one else dared to lash Al-Walid ibn Uqba. But Imam Ali, he said, I'll do it. There's some narrations, it says it was either him or his nephew, Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyar. Imam Ali took that whip and he lashed him in front of everyone. It says, this is the hukm of Allah and his prophet. This is the law of Allah and his messenger. Al-Walid ibn Uqba, he never forgot this. He held this against Imam Ali for the rest of his life. In any case, what ends up happening is that when he replaces Al-Walid ibn Uqba, who does he replace him with? He replaces him with another Umayyad governor. And so tension is slowly starting to mount. But then Uthman makes the critical mistake of pissing off certain members of the Sahaba. There were certain prominent members of the Sahaba that Uthman didn't take them as seriously as he should. One of them, Abu Dharr, radwanullahi ta'ala alayh. Abu Dharr, when he saw Uthman's corruption and his nepotism, he refused to stop speaking out against it. And I'll tell you exactly what happened to Abu Dharr, radwanullahi ta'ala alayh. Abu Dharr, Uthman tried to bribe him, didn't work. So what did he do? He sent him to Syria. He said, Muawiyah, I can't have this guy in my capital. I'm going to send him to you and you deal with him. Muawiyah, you know what he used to do? Muawiyah used to use his money to build palaces and buy slaves. And Abu Dhar, you think Abu Dhar remained silent about that? Abu Dhar radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi, every morning, he would get up at the same time every morning, and then he would stand in front of Muawiyah's palace, reciting the ayah, and those who hoard the gold and the silver, and those who hoard the gold and the silver. Right? Eventually, what did Muawiyah do? Muawiyah decided, he said, I can't deal with him. If I can't kill him, then I can't shut him up. So what did he try to do? He sent him back to Uthman. Said, he's your problem now. I can't deal with it. Good luck. One night, Abu Dhar, someone knocks on his door. Abu Dhar opens the door. Can I help you? He says, I'm Abu Dhar. The ruler would like to give you some money. Abu Dhar, you know what he said? He said, what is this? Is this a gift? He said, yes, this is a gift. He said to him, did all of the other Muslims receive a gift like this? He said, no, it's just for you. He says, take it away. When all the Muslims get the gift like me, then I'll accept it. Damn, Abu Dhar, you have kids, you have daughters, they want to give, take this money. He says, no, don't worry about them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them rizq. He sustained me this long, hasn't he? He said to him, Abu Dhar, listen, they told me, if you can convince Abu Dhar to accept this gift, we'll set you free, because he's a slave. He says, Abu Dhar, I know you're not a man of the dunya, but for my sake, tried to break his heart. He said, for my sake, accept it. You know what Abu Dhar radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi said? He said, brother, if I accept this and set you free, then I will be enslaving myself to the dunya. I'll never accept the bribe. I'll keep speaking out against you and your master so long as you keep breaking the law of Allah and his messenger. Abu Dhar, eventually, you know what they did to him? They exiled him to Rabada, which is a desert outside of Medina. Imam Ali alayhi salam and Hassan and Hussein, they came out to meet him before he was exiled. And Abu Dhar radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi, even Rasulullah predicted this would happen to him. There was once a story, Abu Dhar fell behind. When the Muslim army was on the march, he fell behind. And so he's behind, the Muslims are all ahead, he's all alone. Who catches up with him? Rasulullah. Rasulullah had also fallen behind for a reason. He said, Abu Dhar, what's wrong? You're all alone. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I fell behind. Right? And no one cared about me. No one stopped to say, where's Abu Dhar? We can't see Abu Dhar. You know what Rasulullah said to Abu Dhar? He said, Abu Dhar, you live alone, you will die alone, and on Yawm al-Qiyamah, you will be resurrected alone. So Abu Dhar, they exiled him to this desert, this God-forsaken desert, this wasteland, and he desperately tried to find a way to survive. He desperately tried to irrigate the land, but it was to no avail. One by one, his family members, his wife and his children, they died until it was just him and his daughter. And so his daughter asked him, she said, Father, did we do something wrong? Did we do something haram? Why has Allah done this to us? He said to her, my daughter, Allah's messenger told me this would happen. This is not a punishment from Allah. This is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so she said to him, she said, Father, but if you die out here, who's going to bury you? You know what he said to her? He said, Rasulullah promised me, Abu Dhar, when you pass away, a group of righteous men from Iraq will be the ones to bury you. So Abu Dhar, he died, and his poor daughter was left there all alone. A group of Sahaba from Kufa were coming on their way to Medina to meet with Uthman. One of them was Malik al-Ashtar. Malik al-Ashtar, he passed through, he sees all these dead people, and he sees Abu Dhar. He says, what on earth happened here? And she told him the sad story. That's one Sahabi. Another Sahabi, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the famous reciter of the Quran. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he got into such a dispute with Uthman ibn Affan. What ended up happening to him? They broke his ribs. The guards of Uthman broke his ribs. And so Uthman tried to come visit him. And so poor Ibn Mas'ud is laying there in bed, on his deathbed. And Uthman, he says to him, he says, is there anything I can do for you and your family? I can give them some money and make sure they're taken care of after you. You know what Ibn Mas'ud said to him? He said, Uthman, me and my family, we have no need of you or your money. My family have, I think it was Surah Al-Waqi'ah. It says every night they recite Surah Al-Waqi'ah before going to sleep, and Allah will sustain them. It's another companion of Rasulullah. Another one, Ammar ibn Yasir radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi. Ammar used to speak out against Uthman. Uthman, you know what he did? Him and his guards beat up Ammar so badly he suffered a hernia. One of his organs was pushed out of place. Ammar radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi, he had to go to al-Mu'mineen Salama's house, and she nursed him back to health. So why Salama's house? Salama is from Bani Makhzum. My dear brothers and sisters, Uthman was a slave of Bani Makhzum. Under the laws of Islam, these people, these freedmen who had no tribe to call their own, their tribe that used to own them, they used to call themselves their masters, now they called them brother. And so Bani Makhzum were like, dude, Ammar is one of us. You mess with Ammar, you mess with us. And so Salama is like, how could you do this to my fellow tribesmen? How could you do this to Ammar, to the companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Another issue. Amr ibn al-As, the famous governor of Egypt, the conqueror of Egypt under Umar. What did Uthman do with him? Uthman removed him from his position in Egypt and replaced him with Ibn Abi Sarh. When he did this, Amr ibn al-As, you think he was happy with that? Amr ibn al-As, every day when Uthman would come in to give a khutbah, him and Uthman would get into a shouting match. Who else did Uthman mess with? Who else did Uthman anger? Uthman made another huge mistake by angering the wife of the Prophet, Aisha. Because under the first and second caliphs, Aisha used to receive a big stipend from the state treasury. Under Uthman, all the wives of Rasulullah received a reduction in their allowance, except for one, except for Habiba, the daughter of Abu Sufyan. Habiba, what tribe is she from? She's from Banu Umayyah, right? And so all of them received a cut in their pay except for Habiba. The other wives didn't really care, but Aisha, she was infuriated. Aisha used to come out into the mosque and used to say, Uthman, you and your tribe are ruining the Islamic State. Your oppression is becoming too much to bear. Uthman, you know what he used to respond to her? He used to say to her, ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا إِمْرَأَةَ نُوحٍ وَامْرَأَةَ لُوطٍ. This is the way he used to respond to Aisha. He's like, don't act like the wives of Nuh and Lut, Aisha. Just because you're the wife of Rasulullah doesn't mean you can talk to your imam that way. And so Aisha, what she used to do, she used to come out into the mosque. She would take the shoes of Rasulullah or the shirt of Rasulullah and she would wave them and she'd tell the people, look everyone, Rasulullah's shirt is still good, but his sunnah is being ruined by this man. اقتلوا نعثلا قتل الله نعثل. Na'thal is a word, by the way, that means a foolish old man. So now Uthman, the enemies, they're all stacking up against him. And his advisor, Marwan ibn al-Hakam, is only making the situation worse. He keeps telling us, like, dude, Uthman, don't worry about these clowns. Who do these people think they are talking to you? You're Amirul Mu'mineen. You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. No one can challenge you. No one at all can lay a hand on you. You are Amirul Mu'mineen. You would have no reason to listen to their criticism. At last, what ends up happening, one of Uthman's, ironically, his last supporters is Imam Ali salamullah alayhi. Imam Ali, whenever Uthman would ask him for advice, he would offer it to him. Because as I said to you before, Imam Ali always puts the well-being of the Muslims before his personal ambitions, right? And so when Uthman would ask Imam Ali for advice, Imam Ali would give him his advice. But would Uthman listen? No. So there's a famous example. When Uthman was up during Hajj one year, he came up and he gave a speech. He said, oh people, Hajj al-Tamattu' is haram. Imam Ali, what did he respond to him? He said, Hajj al-Tamattu' is halal. We used to do it during the time of Rasulullah. Uthman got so angry. He grabbed something, he got off the minbar and he tried to attack Imam Ali with it. But Talha and Zubair wrestled it from his hands. Then he went up to Imam Ali. The narration says he wanted to gouge Ali's eyes out with his fingers. And he said to him, Anta dhallun mudhil. You are a misguided person, spreading your misguidance. Imam Ali salamullah alayhi, he did not shout at him. He didn't lose his temper with him. He simply turned around and left. Right? Now, things are, right now, we're almost at critical mass. The discontent is rising. The factions are forming. And Uthman, all it needs in this hot atmosphere, in this horrible, humid atmosphere, all it takes is one spark to set off the fire. When did that spark come? The people of Egypt, one year, they decided enough is enough. So they gathered in arms, a group of well-known Sahaba, Ibn Udais al-Balawi, and I forget the name of the other one, these two prominent Egyptians, and them and Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, they all gathered together. They said, you know what, we're going to go deal with Uthman. We're going to go talk to Uthman. Enough is enough. We've had enough of him. And so what ends up happening was Muhammad ibn Abi Hudayfa and Abd al-Rahman ibn Udais al-Balawi. From Kufa, even the Iraqis were discontent. The Kufans, led by Malik al-Ashtar and Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman and Ammar ibn Yasir, they also came. What ended up happening in Kufa is that Malik al-Ashtar, him and his companions, they overthrew the governor of Kufa. And they replaced them with someone else. They replaced them with Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Uthman was too busy dealing with issues in Medina to try to oppose them. He just let it go. Said, I can't really do anything about this right now. Meanwhile, the Egyptians, when they came to Medina, what did they do? This massive mob was about to enter Medina. And Uthman had sent a letter to Muawiyah. He's like, dude, cousin, help me out here. These people are about to besiege me. Muawiyah, you know what he did? Muawiyah is like, dude, if I gamble on Uthman, if I side with Uthman and he ends up losing, what's going to happen to me? It's like, I think it's best for me to wait this one out. He sent an army into Arabia and he told them, stay in this area and wait. Don't intervene. Stay there and wait. Observe. These people, what did they do? They came to Medina. Who came out to meet them? Imam Ali salamullah alayhi. He came out to meet them. He said to them, oh people, I understand that you have grievances, but this is Medina. This is the Prophet's city. Right? He says, don't enter the city under the threat of using violence, of using your swords. Try to find another way. And so Uthman, these people, what did they do? They came to the mosque and Uthman gave a speech and he promises, oh people, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix all of the issues. Don't worry about it. I promise you things are going to be different from now on. And so the Egyptians were like, all right, Ali, thank you so much. This is all we wanted. Mission accomplished. Everybody, let's go home. Uthman, you know what he said to Imam Ali? He said to him, Ali, you saved me. Right? And he said to him, Uthman, you're on thin ice, buddy. I barely managed to save you. I barely managed to convince these people to leave you be. If you don't keep your promise, nothing I can do will save you. And so Uthman, he said, okay, Ali, I will do whatever you say. He said to him, I remember this is in Tarikh al-Tabari. What does he say to him? He says, Uthman, all of this is being caused by Marwan, al-Walid ibn Uqba, and Muawiyah, because you keep taking their advice and ignoring me. He said, no, Ali, I promise. From now on, I'm going to follow your advice. And so Imam Ali got up and left. Imam Ali left. Who came into the room later? Marwan ibn al-Hakam. Uthman's wife, Naila, when she saw Marwan, she said, no, you go away. You go away. You're going to ruin everything. Finally, he's starting to see straight and he's starting to take Ali's advice. You need to leave. Marwan is like, woman, get out of my way. You are in no position to tell me what to do. He says, Uthman, what's going on, bro? It's like, yo, Ali helped me out with the situation. Now I'm gonna, change the way. It's like, Uthman, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? The phrase Marwan used, you know what he said to him? He said to him, Uthman, it is better to commit a sin, right? It is better to commit a sin and deal with the fallout of it rather than to apologize and admit you were wrong. Uthman, you're the Khalifa. How can you show weakness in front of this rabble? What's wrong with you? Have you lost your mind? And so Uthman, now Imam Ali had advised him. He said, stop listening to Marwan. Stop listening to Marwan ibn al-Hakam. Stop listening to these relatives of yours. They're going to get you in trouble. Uthman, did he follow the advice? We're about to see. The Egyptians, on their way back to Egypt, they see a camel rider. He's on his way to Egypt. They say, halt. Where are you from? He says, oh, I'm just a traveler. They say, wait a minute. You're wearing some awfully nice clothes for just a normal traveler. And so one of the Egyptians says, seize him. He works for the government. So they grabbed him and they searched him. Like, dude, he's got nothing on him. One of the people, what did he say? He said, listen to me, people. These are Banu Umayyah. You can't trust these people. They're snakes. Check his water bag. You know what they found? They checked his water bag. That's the last place you would think to look for like a letter, right? They checked his water bag. What did they found? They found a sealed lead pipe. They opened it and they found a letter. And they opened the letter. You know what it said? It said, from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Uthman ibn Affan, to Ibn Abi Sarh, the governor of Egypt. When the Egyptians come back to Egypt, I want you to kill this person, kill this person, kill this person, imprison this person, and make sure these people are not given any money from the state treasury. So Uthman had promised them he was going to fix everything. Now they realized that he had tried to send a secret letter back to his governor, right? And at the bottom of the letter, what did it have? It had the stamp of the Khalifa. You know who wrote this letter? It was Marwan ibn al-Hakam who wrote this letter, and then he stamped it with Uthman's seal, and then he sent it to the governor of Egypt. The Egyptians, what do you think their reaction was when they read this letter? They were outraged. Words cannot describe the anger and the rage that these people have felt. Immediately, they turned back around. They said, we're going to Medina and we're taking down Uthman once and for all. Nothing can save him from us this time. And so Aisha, when she heard the news, Aisha was in Medina when these events are all going down, as all the Sahaba slowly turned against Uthman. Amr ibn al-As, when he heard about this, he said, now Uthman is going to get what's coming to him. He packed up his things. He's like, I'm not going to stay in Medina. There's going to be about to be a bloodbath here. He went and moved to Palestine. He went to the land, some of the land that he owned in Palestine. Aisha, meanwhile, what did she do? Marwan and another of Uthman's relatives, they tried to convince her. They said, Aisha, if you tell the people to calm down, maybe you can convince them to calm down. Aisha, she said, wait, you want me to help? I said, yes, you can put out this fire that these people have started. Aisha, her exact words were, she said, by God, if Uthman was here, I would grab him and I would throw him into the ocean. That's how I would put out his fire. And so she decided, you know what? I don't want to be in Medina during this. I'm going to go to Mecca. I'm going to do Hajj. And so Aisha left. Uthman ibn Affan, now he's at the mercy of the mob. He begged Imam Ali for help. You know what Imam Ali said? He said to him, Uthman, I already tried to help you before. In his last address to Marwan, what did Imam Ali say to him? He said, Wallah, I'm not going to help you again. I stuck my neck out for you. I'm not going to help you again because now you have proven that you are an oppressor. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullah alayhi, there are some interesting narrations. There are narrations in the books of Ahl Sunnah that say that he sent Hassan and Hussein to defend Uthman. This is not true. Imam Ali sent Hassan and Hussein to give water to Uthman because the rebels that were besieging him, including Talha and all the other prominent companions like Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr and what was his name again? Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khuza'i, as well as Uthman ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Hudayfa and Uthman ibn Udays al-Balawi. These people have all laid siege to him. He can't even get a drink of water. The Prophet's wife, Habiba, she tried to get him some water. They wouldn't let it happen. Right? And he begged them. He said, people, I'm the companion of Rasulullah. I'm your caliph. He said, no, man, you're done. You're finished this time. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen sent his sons to give him some water. Why? It's because no one deserves to die thirsty. Not even an animal. Subhanallah, how Bani Umayyah paid back the Ahlul Bayt years later. Right? And so after I don't remember how long the siege lasted, but after a very, very long siege, eventually what happened? A group of people, Sudan ibn Humran, Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khuza'i, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, and there was one more. What was his name? Astaghfirullah. Kinana ibn Bishr. These four people, what did they decide to do? There's got to be a way to get into his palace. There's got to be a way to get into his house. What did they do? They went to the neighbor's house. They scaled the roof, and from that roof, they jumped into Uthman's house through one of the windows. And so they found Uthman. According to the narrations, they found him reading the Quran. And so when they saw him, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr grabbed him by his beard. He said, Na'thal, you're finished. Uthman, what did he say? He said, Muhammad, don't do this to me. Would your father approve of this? He said, if my father was around, he would do something worse to you. And so Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, him and Sudan ibn Humran, they dealt Uthman the killing blows. They both stabbed him. Amr ibn Hamaq al-Khuza'i, what did he do? He stabbed Uthman's body 9 times. And then they left. Sudan ibn Humran, one of the perpetrators, he was killed. Because Uthman's guards and his relatives, they skirmished with them outside the palace and they managed to kill him. But Uthman was now dead. After 12 years of ruling the Muslim Ummah and basically reversing all the gains of the Prophet ﷺ and taking the family that were Islam's greatest enemies and putting them in power, now he was killed. Interestingly enough, what happened? Uthman, they wanted to bury him. Right? They wanted to bury him next to Rasulullah, the same way Abu Bakr and Umar were buried. So Marwan ibn al-Hakam and the Banu Umayyah, they tried to bury him. The people of Medina, you know what they did? They say, we'll never let you bury him next to Rasulullah. We'll never let you bury this tyrant next to our Prophet. Where can you bury him? Go bury him in Hashkokab. Hashkokab is an area near Baqi'. You know what Hashkokab was? Back when the Jews still lived in Yathrib, this is the area they would go to relieve themselves, to use answer the call of nature. So I've seen some reports that say they buried Uthman in the Jewish graveyard. I say, no, they buried Uthman in the Jewish toilet. That's what they did. And I say, there's some people that are like, Imam Ali never had an issue with Uthman. Imam Ali, salamullah alayhi, when Salman al-Farisi died in Madain. Imam Ali traveled for 3 days from Medina to Madain so he can do the janazah of Salman al-Farisi, salamullahi alayhi. For 3 days, Uthman, they wouldn't allow anyone to bury him. Imam Ali, did he do anything about it? No. Then they buried him in Hashkokab. For 3 days, chaos reigned over Medina because all the various factions, because keep in mind, the people who teamed up to take down Uthman, they weren't all on the same page. Some of them wanted a return to the reign of Abu Bakr and Umar, to the superiority of Quraysh. They said, no, we want to make this Qurayshist thing, not Bani Umayyah's thing. We want to take it back to the days of Abu Bakr and Umar. Some people, like the Ansar and the disenfranchised and the non-Arabs, what did they want? They said, no, we don't want Quraysh. We want the rule of Rasulullah back. One of the leaders of this, who are the leaders? Ammar ibn Yasir, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, and Malik al-Ashtar. Malik al-Ashtar years ago, because Malik al-Ashtar was a noble from Yemen who partook in the conquest movement. So years ago, he's in Kufa. When there was issues with the governors of Kufa, he came to meet Uthman and address his issues. While he was waiting to meet Uthman, who did he meet with? He met Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayh. And so later, when him and Ammar returned to Kufa, what did they tell the people? They said, people, all the issues we're facing, there's only one man who can fix them. It's Ali, salamullahi alayh. And so in Medina at the time, after the death of Uthman, there were 2 factions. One faction wanted Talha to become the next Khalifa because Talha was from the same tribe as Abu Bakr. He was a companion of high standing, he had a lot of support. Aisha, this is the person she threw her support behind. The other people, right, the non-Qurayshis, the Ansar, the Yemenis, who did they want? They wanted Ali ibn Abi Talib. In the end, who managed to win? Imam Ali's supporters managed to snatch it. They said, we're not going back to the rule of Quraysh again. We're giving this to someone who knows how to fix this problem. If there's anyone who can fix this mess that Uthman has made, it's Ali ibn Abi Talib. Imam Ali, salamullahi alayhi, I remember the narrations when they came to give him bay'ah, he said to them, he said, I don't want to rule over you. I said, why? Imam, why? He said, because Islam, you turned it into a kingdom. I'm not interested in ruling a kingdom. If I were to rule over you, I would rule over you with the same justice as Allah and his messenger. Is that what you want? He said, Imam, yes, that's what we want. I remember the narration. What does it say? It says, Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein, this mob surround the house, trying to get to Imam Ali, trying to give him the Pledge of Allegiance. Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein, they were nearly crushed by this mob. They're trying to keep everybody out of the house. And they're like, no, we demand that we will not accept anyone except for Ali. They said, Ali, we will not leave her until you let us give you bay'ah. Imam Ali, you know what he said to them? He said, I will take the bay'ah, but my bay'ah is not going to be some secret meeting. It's not going to be some council. My bay'ah will be in public in the Masjid al-Nabawi, in front of everyone. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi, he says, I'm not going to take the bay'ah in secret. It's going to be in public where everyone can see it. Imam Ali, I have never come across a Khalifa in all of Islamic history. In all of Islamic history, how many Khalifas were there? 101. Only one Khalifa that I come across. Only one Khalifa did not punish the people who refused to give him bay'ah. There were multiple people who did not want to give bay'ah to Imam Ali. Imam Ali did not punish any of them. Talha, according to Al-Aqd al-Farid by Al-Andalusi, he was the first one to give bay'ah to Imam Ali, and then Zubair. They gave him bay'ah. So while all of this is happening in Medina, meanwhile in Mecca, Aisha is on her way back to Medina. And she's in a good mood because she heard that Uthman is dead. So on the way back, she meets one of her maternal relatives, someone from her mother's side of the family. She said, what's the news? What happened? She said, Uthman was killed. She said, oh, okay. Uthman was killed? That's great. Who became Khalifa? Was it Talha? No. Oh. Well, if it isn't Talha, who became the Khalifa? It was Ali ibn Abi Talib. The people gave bay'ah to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Aisha, you know what her reaction was? You can almost imagine her eyes lighting on fire. She said, Uthman was killed while he was oppressed, and I will demand vengeance for his blood. A while later, in the house of Aisha, this goes back to a narration from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he pointed to the house of Aisha. He says, Ha huna al-fitna, minha huna yakhruju qarn al-shaytan. Says, this is fitna. This is where fitna will rear its ugly head. This is where the horn of shaitan will emerge. Aisha, a few of Uthman's, the elements of Talha's faction and a few of the elements of Uthman's faction. They met in her house. They said, guys, listen, we have our differences, but Ali ibn Abi Talib, he's going to ruin everything. So what do we do? So they said, you know what? We're going to have to gather supporters, and we're going to have to gather money, and we're going to have to take him down. And so they decided, well, how should we do that? We can't attack Medina because the Ansar, they're all overwhelmingly in support of Ali. We'll never be able to take Medina from him. His supporters rule over the city. So, well, wait a minute. Talha and Zubair, they participated in the conquest movement. And so they have supporters in Iraq. Let's go to Basra. If we can seize Basra, then taking Ali down should be easy. And so it was in the house of Aisha, in this place, evidently, where fitna reared its ugly head. And so, inshallah, in the next discussion that we have, I don't know when I'll be able to do it, we will cover Ma'arakat al-Jamal. We will cover the early days of Imam Ali's Khilafah, and we will cover the clash between him and Ashab al-Jamal.